So part of making money as a landlord is recognizing when money is coming in and too much money is going out. Today we're talking all about repair waste and ways that you can keep more money in your pocket. Let's get started. Now, especially if you're a new landlord, some of these issues and some of these techniques are going to be foreign to you. But take it from someone who's spoken to thousands of landlords with tens of thousands of doors, that these problems come up all the time and they pretty much look the same each time they arise. The question isn't whether or not a repair issue is going to pop up during a tenancy. The real question is, how are you going to respond to it? By having a plan in place and by anticipating that problems always come up, you're going to be ready for it and you're going to make a better financial decision every single time. One way that landlords tend to waste money and time with repairs is by running to the scene. The tenant will give a panicked phone call or send a panicked email or text to you, and there you go running to the rent house to see what's the matter, to make sure that everything is okay. But the truth is, unless you're dealing with an absolute emergency, there's really no reason to run. Sometimes it takes a little stop and wait and evaluate from a distance before you act so you make the best move possible. Because the truth is, not every repair request is the same. Surely you understand that the gravity of a leaky faucet is different than the gravity of a 12-inch hole in the roof. And so where one requires a bit of urgency, the other simply doesn't. And so your diligence isn't measured by how fast you get to the property, it's measured by what you do in response and whether that response is reasonable. Because the truth is, some repair requests require no response at all. If your tenant, for example, is asking for a cosmetic repair or a cosmetic adjustment or modification to the premises, that's not a repair that you necessarily have to undertake. If the cabinet is the wrong shade of beige, or if the refrigerator is not centered enough, these are not things that require repair or adjustment. You might just have a very needy tenant. And the truth is, a lot of these things can be addressed in your house rules. For example, if you have certain items on your property that simply require adjustment or modification from time to time, then let your house rules deal with it. Make sure you leave instructions for your tenants on how to deal with certain issues on the property that are specific to that property. But if a tenant requests a repair or a modification of something that really isn't anything more than just the look or the feel of it, then it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, when you took the property in the as-is condition, that was the shade of beige those cabinets were, and so I'm gonna leave them that way for now. If it turns out that your tenant insists that some cosmetic change be made because they suddenly feel the need for it, well, if they're willing to cover the cost, then sure. But again, you're going to want to take into consideration, even when a tenant is willing to cover costs, what this is going to cost you in the long run. If overall your property is going to be somehow made better, sure. But if it's in any way going to be made worse, then they also must agree to cover the cost to remove or revert back to the original. So the best way to deal with a tenant request for repair is to have a plan in place. And whether you're dealing with a nervous tenant that calls you every other day, or whether you're dealing with somebody who genuinely reached out to you in the middle of the night with an authentic emergency, you need to have a plan in place. What happens if you're on vacation? Do you have someone in place to handle the emergency call? Do you handle them yourself? Do you have a property manager handle those? Do you already have someone in line in terms of a handyman or a repair person ready to go in the event of an emergency. If you don't, or you haven't even considered these things, now is the time to do it. Don't wait to develop a plan when that emergency strikes. Plus, have a plan when you have non-emergency requests. If you have routine repairs or routine maintenance to supply to your rent property, make sure you also have a plan in place. Make sure you have a quick response to your tenant saying, this is what I do in these situations. You can expect me there in X number of days. Of course, for an emergency situation, you may have to reduce that to hours based on the situation, but you always want a prepared response so that your tenant knows you are acting diligently. That includes a quick response through text or email, maybe a phone call. You have a plan in place, ready to go before the issue arrives. By having this plan, you're gonna have your tenants more assured that you're on top of it, and it's gonna end up working much smoother than otherwise. Every week I see so many comments from people saying, thank you so much for the video content you put out there. And I tell you, I really appreciate that. Another thing you can do is subscribe if you haven't done that before. Give us a like if you are enjoying this content. And for those of you who have questions or comments, leave those below. I'll do my best to get to those shortly with helpful information. Now, when it comes to a repair that absolutely must happen, make sure you're in the driver's seat. You want to be the decision maker on all things having to do with your repairs. The moment you cede that authority over to your tenant, you open up a door and all sorts of bad things come through, and you don't want that. One of the worst things you can do is simply take the Tenants Guy for any repair or routine maintenance. If they've got someone they know and trust, they might eventually be someone that you know and that you trust, but if that's not that person right now, stick with your guy. Make sure that you already have a guy, someone in place that you can rely on, because chances are the Tenants Guy isn't gonna line up with your expectations, and that's only gonna create disappointment for you. You may have a tenant that comes to you with a laundry list of demands saying this and this and this and this and this all need to be repaired. And you go and run and you do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. But in retrospect, you review the work that you've done and find, well, 3 of those things really were working just fine. The repair person said, there's really no need to do anything here, but they were there and you paid them for it, so they did it. That is waste. Just because it's on the list doesn't mean you absolutely have to do it. Make sure that there's a justification for any work that you actually authorize to be done. Too many times people just want to avoid confrontation. They want to avoid trouble, so they're just going to do it anyway. But I guarantee you, by not putting your foot down and saying, no, that's not required, you're going to be asked again and again and again for things that you just don't need to do and money that you just don't need to spend. Your tenant may also have very high standards or particular requests for particular materials that will be the only way to satisfy their particular needs. And so, do you have to go and buy the brand of paint that they want at the store where they allow you to shop? No, you just don't. The fact is, as long as you are diligently addressing a necessary repair, as long as what you're doing is adequate to address that repair and still in line with the quality that the tenant chose when they took the tenancy from the beginning, there's nothing wrong with you being in the driver's seat when it comes to selecting the kinds of material, the quality of the material, and the brand. You know, the tenant may offer suggestions, and you may decide, well, there's no real difference between where I usually shop and where they want me to go. Or there's no real difference between brand X that I normally use and the brand that they want. So I'll do this as a favor. That's good customer service. But if they're dictating things that go well beyond what is absolutely necessary, and certainly that go well beyond what they had when they entered the premises, that's a mistake, and that's a potential waste that you just don't have to suffer. Make sure it's clear to your tenants who makes the final decisions on all repairs. It should always be you. Now, some losses you won't experience for a while. These are your delayed losses, things that will creep up later because you didn't do the right thing from the start. If you get notice of some little problem at some time in the middle of the tenancy, but you decide, well, it's not big enough to do anything about it right now, and you wait for that little problem to become a more substantial problem, because in your estimation, well, it doesn't have a material effect on the health and safety of an ordinary tenant just yet. I'm going to wait until it does. Well, that delay might make what could have been a few $100s in repair suddenly a few $1,000s. And so you really have to ask yourself, even if the severity isn't there, by addressing the problem, are you saving money down the line? By delaying your response to a little problem, are you creating a bigger problem in your future? Another shortcut that landlords sometimes employ is one that I absolutely recommend you avoid, and that's having your tenant do the repair themselves. Hey, I got this thing, I can take care of it. Because the truth is, for the tenant's benefit, it's best to get it done as cheaply and as quickly as possible. And you know, that might not line up entirely with your requirements or what is best for you. You may have a tenant that, quote unquote, fixed the problem, but when they leave, you have to refix it. That's that delay. That's you having to pay additional sums over and above what was already paid to fix the problem because you didn't do it yourself, or you let the tenant do it and they actually made it worse. Again, always handle all your repairs yourself. If your tenant is going to handle it, you run the risk of you later having to fix what they fixed. Nothing is worse than having a repair that you need right now and having nobody to do it. You are then at the mercy of whoever you're calling. Number one, not knowing exactly the kind of quality work that they do, not having an established relationship with them. You don't know if you can trust this person to actually get the job done. So don't ever make a repair request on the fly. Always, always, always have someone in mind who can do a repair for you even before you need it. By getting ahead of this process, you are always going to save yourself more money because you're going to have people in place that you know and trust, get the kind of quality work that you require, and you're going to spend the exact amount of money that the work is worth and not a penny more. Repairs don't happen every single day, but when they do, you need to have thought ahead of time in order to make the best decision that you possibly can. For even more content on excellent landlording, there's a video right here that YouTube seems to think is perfect for you. Watch it and the rest of the content of this channel. And until next time, landlords, happy leasing.